I finally got access to Claude Code, which I've really been wanting to try out. So let's code and try it out. Come on. So I've already coded with Claude 3.7 Sonnet, but in Windsurf here. All I did over here was go, boom, 3.7 Sonnet. I haven't used thinking yet, and then I was able to use it. And that way, because it charges, per credit, I didn't have to sell a kidney. But I really want to try it in this CLI here for many reasons. Login successful. It's currently in research preview. It can make mistakes. No. Not AI making mistakes. Due to prompt injection risk, only use it with code you trust. Start in your project directory. Files are automatically added to the context we needed. Use it as a development partner to get help with file analysis, editing, bash commands, and Git history. That's one thing, is that it doesn't have autocomplete. Autocomplete is such a beautiful thing when you're actually writing your own code. Here it's more like, well, exactly what this says, but also to one-shot things. You just prompt it and hope that it can do everything that you need it to do. Provide clear context. Be as specific as you would with any engineer. The better the context, the better the results. Take that with all of your AI communication. Yeah, I do in fact trust my own folder. So run init to create Claude MD file with instructions for Claude, and I can ask questions about the code base and ask it to implement changes to the code base. Can I CD in this thing? So I guess I want to go into my working directory and then call Claude. I guess that makes sense. Yes, proceed. Good to go. Start in your project directory. Now here's my typical development environment. I have the front end running right here. I have the Go Fiber backend running right here. I have Docker desktop running so that Docker actually works in WSL because it wasn't before. Now I got to make sure, okay, Docker's available for code execution. And do I want to run Claude in here? I probably would in a normal setting. However, I don't want things to get confusing, particularly for the video. I want to make sure that we are being distinct in that this is Claude Code CLI, whereas the other, if I do anything else in there, would be probably still Claude 3.7 Sonnet, but with Windsurf. So first things first, there's something that I know I need to get done, and that is this. View challenges right here, and I have this pretty crappy UI. It's actually really good because it just one-shotted it, but it's not good in terms of what is actually good, where we have these, various coding challenges, and I click on that. Okay, we have errors. Let's ignore the errors for the time being, but you see how it's like this text is dark, this you can't even read. So what I want to do is see if Claude can help me out with the UI. On the front end, I have UI that needs improvement. Make the color scheme primary deep coastal blue, secondary rustic gold, and accents being weathered white and aged parchment. And for a dark mode variant, swap parchment for deep charcoal with muted gold highlights. There's no way I'm going to keep this, but I want to see what it does. Font headers and logo to be something like EB, Garamond, or Playfair display, and body text to be clean like Enter Work Sans. It needs to be readable. Fix a formatting. What did I just say here? Fix formatting and ensure font color and background colors are not similar. The font must be readable. Let's do it. Crap, I'm broke. All right, I got some moolah. $20. Please tell me I can. Oh, thank God, I can just hit the up arrow and not have to retype that entire thing. All right, now let's do it. Oh yeah, I should have specified Tailwind. Woo. Good thing it saw that I was already using Tailwind. Now I'll check if the project has a layout complete. All right, what's going on here? I'll implement those UI improvements on the front end. Let me first look at current configurations. Reading. Now I'll check if the project has a layout component. Read. First, I'll update the fonts in the layout file to use the fonts. We're updating layout.tsx to use the font, yeah. Okay, and we adjusted, just some of that metadata, whatever. Do you want to make this edit to the layout? Do I just let it roll? I'm just going to let it roll for testing purposes. All right, gosh, I feel like we're so used to AI that this is just kind of crazy. It's crazy. Imagine this 5 years ago, 2020. If you could just do that, that's pretty wild. And this is what it has done. UI improvements have been successfully implemented with the specified color scheme and fonts. We updated the color scheme, updated the fonts, created consistent components with proper color contrast for readability, implemented responsive designs across all pages, and added utility classes for buttons, cards, and typography. All requested changes have been applied to create a cohesive, elegant UI with proper contrast ratios for readability. Let's see. Readability? Really? Okay, well, I can't read this. I can't read this. I can't read that. So that's an unfortunate situation. Okay, it fixed these though. I know I'm kind of in the way, but this was smaller than the rest of these. Still unreadable. The home page has been changed. View on GitHub. Does it have the actual? It has the actual GitHub, but it's private. Sorry, guys. Yeah, so it cleaned it up, but look, this is all left aligned right over here. This is centered. So you have centered, 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 left aligned, left aligned. I thought AI was supposed to be good at doing UI stuff. I mean, really, I've been seeing, oh, it one-shotted this and it did all of that, but the 2 times, I've only tried it with 3.7. The 2 times I've tried it with 3.7 to like try to one-shot a UI and just kind of do it just like that. And I gave it some specifics. Maybe, did I? I mean, I did give the primary a deep coastal blue. So there is a possibility that was user error, where since I said primary deep coastal blue, and that is in fact the color that is, you know, not readable because it's not contrasting what's behind it. But, or even back over here, same idea here. We have this background and then that. And as you can see right here, that cost 35 cents to do. The coastal blue font is hardly readable because where it is used, the background is dark too. Change one or both colors. I want to see if it can do it on its own. As opposed to me saying, okay, change this to that color, this background, the button background, and like that. Primary to secondary. Secondary is the white, right? Rustic gold. Okay. So it looks like it's just changing all of that text from primary to secondary and just ignoring the primary color. And there you go. Okay, it did change it. You know, I'm not saying it's the best stylist in the world or designer in the world, but it did change it. It didn't change this. Did it change this button up here? It didn't change this one either. Gosh, how much did it cost to do that? Holy smokes. That cost 27 cents. Okay, let's see if we can actually solve these errors. It looks like all of these errors are the same. A param property was accessed directly with param's ID, which by the way is code that 3.7 Sonnet wrote within Windsurf last week. But what if I copy this box ID page? I'm gonna paste it here. Oh, I tried to shift enter to make a new line so that way I could tell it where it's set, which is box ID page.tsx. So maybe it can do it on its own. Huh. All right. I'm good to go. Can I see cost within here? Cost. Yes, I can. So cost. So this is the total, but not per. Oh, so that only cost 4 cents. Huh. That's more valuable than the crappy UI it tried to change. It did do a lot less, to be fair. Okay. Moving on from UI. Now let's work with some logic. All right, so right now I'm using Docker containers for challenges, but I would rather use Firecracker-based microVMs. So replace the Docker-based execution flow with Firecracker. MicroVMs should boot from a minimal guest OS like Alpine or custom microVM image or something. Run code execution inside the microVM and retrieve the output. Ensure they are fully destroyed after execution, just like the Docker container. So boot, execute, return output, and then destroy. They need to spin up fast. Let's roll. Whoo, it's got a lot of stuff here. Oh my goodness, this is a lot. So it created a file, firecracker executor.go, with 338 additions, which is the executor implementation. 338 lines of code. Now updating the go.mod file, of course, include the UUID package used by the Firecracker executor, which is already included as a dependency, so didn't need to change that. However, we are updating the execution handlers.go from new Docker executor to new Firecracker executor, updating the Docker file to include Firecracker, went back into the Firecracker executor.go file that it just created with 3 additions and 2 removals. That's nice. Oh wow, and then did even more with 53 additions and 6 removals. So it's like iterating through to make sure that the code that it just wrote is actually good. And maybe it's not actually good because it keeps going through it. 28 more additions, 7 more removals. Okay, back into the Docker file, 2 additions, 2 removals. It's going back and forth. 10 additions, 4 removals in the Firecracker executor, and then it just keeps doing this. So it's doing a lot within Firecracker executor.go, adding things, removing things, going to, oh, this is finally, let's update the create init rd function to use vsock for communication. Oh, I didn't realize it had some instructions there. I thought it was just changing. Yeah, see here it didn't have any instructions. It was just changing some code. And then up here, I think, is the same idea. Oh, it's enhancing Firecracker executor to include proper socket communication with the VM for code execution results. And then all the way back down here is updating the Docker file to ensure SOCAT is installed in the Alpine Linux root FS. Add code to listen on the vsoc in the host. Install SOCAT in the host environment too. Ooh, now it's going into fly.toml since I'm deploying this back into fly.io. Okay. Perfect. I've successfully replaced the Docker-based execution system with a Firecracker microVM solution. Here's a summary of the changes. Wow, this is so clean. I'm going to kill this, rerun it. We have a little issue here, and that is strconf imported and not used. So through that, Firecracker in here. Is that the only issue that we have? I don't see anything else that is red. So let's give it another shot. It runs, so that's nice. Warning, Firecracker is not available. Code execution will be simulated. So this will work, but it's not Firecracker that's actually working here. So let's let it know that we're getting warning, Firecracker is not available. Code execution will be simulated. Wait, and that earlier one costs, I forget what we were at before. So it did all of that. I've improved the Firecracker executor with more robust error handling and fallback mechanisms, with enhanced check Firecracker availability, improved simulate execution, and then added more verbose logging to help diagnose issues. So let's give it another shot. Oh, well, that's not good. Add this as an import. Okay, good to go. Code execution engine initialized. Backend service is ready. Wait, warning, Firecracker binary not found to path. Code execution will be simulated. Great. Oh, and how much did this cost? From 1852, just this little bit right here, it costs 28 cents. So I'm eating lunch right now. Was taking a little break, but I do want to ask it one thing. So what I got here is the Docker container wouldn't work unless Docker desktop was open and running on Windows. Code is running on WSL. Is there something similar that Firecracker needs so that it'll actually run as opposed to a code issue? So it did give me an answer, but this is one where it's like, do I set up everything so that I can test it? Because here's the thing. It says, yes, this is primarily an environment permission issue rather than a code problem. Firecracker has specific system requirements that are similar to Docker's need for the daemon to be running. Which, by the way, this is great feedback here. So for Firecracker to work on WSL2, you need all of these things: KVM access, permission requirements, WSL2 kernel configuration. So basically, I'd have to make sure that Windows host has hardware virtualization enabled in BIOS, running WSL2 with a custom kernel that supports nested virtualization, and making sure proper permissions are set for dev KVM. However, this is just for dev, so I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to set that up locally when in the future, not right now. I'm going to set it up on a server. It just is honestly a little bit of a waste of time for me to do right now, but I wanted to include this portion in the video because it was interesting to see how it worked. I also want to take a look at the code that it wrote. So this code right here is what it wrote. How many lines of code is this file? 532. This is the Firecracker executor .go file, which only had one error, which it had an unused import. Again, I'm not testing to see if all of this code works exactly how I need it to, with the KVM info, with the SOCAT, with all of these extra things. Oh no, it didn't have an unused import. I needed to import format myself, right? I don't know, I forget. But I mean, this is a lot of code that at first glance seems pretty dang solid. We have initialized script right here to run our code and send the result to the host. We use vsoc for communication between the VM and the host. And then this is our simulate execution. So it simulates code execution when Firecracker is not available. Write code to file, try to use real Node.js if available. This is pretty cool. Wait. I do have to check one thing though. This was a very simple message, very, very quick. How much did it cost? 4 cents for that answer right there. I mean, it's value information. I think 4 cents is actually worth it. If you can get it for cheaper elsewhere, then okay, sure. But I mean, 4 cents so that I don't have to look all of this up, and like that's a lot of time saved for just 4 cents. Not too bad. Oh, and also I did just try to implement something else. This is another thing that you have to take into account when it comes to your money, is that sometimes I mean, how often do you revert, or how often do you throw code by the wayside because you're like, I got to start this over, or it's just junk, or whatever. Maybe I'll use it in the future, but I just spent, well, what is it, $2.05 on something that I am not going to use. But what I would like to do now is the infamous Rust test. And this is what I'm talking about. During AOC, I was learning Rust, and instead of using iterator methods, because I didn't know any better, I just wrote everything with for loops, and more for loops, and then some quick and dirty couple of if statements that could easily be combined. But you know, it's not perfect code. All I needed to do was get the safe count of reports and then entered the number, and it worked. I didn't need to optimize it. But I was curious, what would it look like optimized? So what I had done to test out 3.5 and Windsurf and things like that, I said, instead of for loops, use the iterator method, assuming that's best practice. And I did that a couple of weeks ago. And then just when 3.7 came out, if you watched that video of mine all about Claude 3.7, I did the same exact thing to see if there was any difference from 3.5 to 3.7 from my initial for loop code that you just saw. And there were a few differences. What you see in red is 3.5, what you see in green is 3.7. And while they did all the for loops exactly the same, 3.5 actually did a little bit better. I was like, maybe this is some sort of Windsurf's implementation of it. So I figured, let's see if Claude Code, which is just pure Claude 3.7 Sonnet, can do any better. So I'm going to take this prompt, and I guess I'll hop out of this. Okay, so it is in the directory where it can access main.rs, and I'm going to say, instead of for loops, use the iterator method, assuming that's best practice, so it's the exact same prompt as Windsurf with 3.5 and 3.7. I did save this, right? Yes, I did. Okay, good. Okay, let's see what it had done. Replaced for line in read to string for each, like last time. We have this any iterator method. We have the all method down here, and then it did fix my if statements like this. However, 3.7 in both instances, whether it's alone, you know, Claude Code, I feel like that's raw 3.7, whereas the other 3.7 in Windsurf, I'm like, oh, maybe Windsurf had some stuff to do with how it worked. I didn't know, but it didn't change anything else. Yes, make the edit, or if it's going to ask to run or not. I guess we could do cargo check. I'd rather you do cargo run. Ooh, error. Oh, I did see that, but I wasn't sure if that was correct or not. I think that just needs to be removed, and it's reports length directly to any. Yeah, okay. Yeah, let's make that change. Cargo check. Now cargo run. Yes, I do want to do a cargo run. Oh, reports is 577. That is correct. And then here it's just saying what it did, which another for loop, by the way, was replaced by map. I may have mentioned that earlier. I'm not sure. But it replaced four for loops with a for each, a map, an any, and an all. So it worked. And that also proves my theory, or my previous test, that 3.5 made a couple more adjustments to make slightly better code than 3.7. At least based on the research I've done and my understanding of Rust, which isn't extensive, it does make more sense for it to use that slice with the array instead of the vec, and what 3.5 did. Whatever. They both were able to take my prompt and fix it. This did have one small error. Every single time it had one small error. 3.5 had just the syntax error, whereas 3.7 both times had some sort of other error. Like this added iter method .any instead of, I don't know if it hallucinated that or what. Or maybe my prompt tricked it, but it should know better. And hold on, what did that cost? We're at 1642. It costs $1.19. Huh, interesting. So what are my overall thoughts on this? Obviously, I haven't done it full workflow. I did it a little bit differently than what I would normally do it. Again, I would normally come over into VS Code or whatever you have, and then just run it in this terminal right here. I understand some people don't like built-in terminals to like VS Code and things. I've never had an issue with it, but I would run it right here so I can have all context. But based on just this little bit of experience that I've had, this feels nicer having it right here than it would be here. Like the way it works, the way it shows the diffs because it's built into the editor, which is, I mean, this did show our diff right here. I mean, it all shows diffs, but you have to scroll all the way up instead of having your tabs normally like you would in a IDE in a code editor. I just feel like it has better quality of life over using it directly in the CLI. Now, will I use Claude Code over with Neovim or something? Maybe that would be a better use case for it. And also this has really good autocomplete. If I come down here, it's probably going to recommend that I write a test. And boom, test is safe, assert is safe. Okay, like that type of stuff. I love autocomplete. Autocomplete is fantastic. Autocomplete is something where you don't just come over here and you type in a prompt, and then you just let it do everything, and then you analyze the code, which is the least favorite part of coding anyway. Like that is the most boring part of coding, is trying to analyze somebody else's code or AI code. I'd rather write the code myself, even though it is nice to have something to help you, particularly in when you're between a rock and a hard place. But if you have autocomplete, you get help along the way regardless. And you have full context of what your code actually does. Earlier in this video, I talked about if I wanted to dive into the code, like if it were to write 1, 3, 5 files, I would have to dive into all of it and really look at it to really understand the code. So if something goes wrong, I would understand what is wrong. Whereas if something goes wrong and I don't understand the code, then I'm just back at the AI asking the AI, how do I fix this? Because you wrote it, I don't know what's going on here. With autocomplete, you writing it yourself, or at least, very least, you analyzing the code, that'll make it a much better experience. And I think that when it comes to Windsurf or Cursor, I still need to try out Cursor, but both of those use Sonnet as a credit. And it appears that that will be cheaper than running it directly. It may not. I would have to test it longer, but I spent about just under $5 here, 23 cents under $5 in an hour or two. That's expensive. That's more expensive, without a doubt. So I don't know who would prefer Claude Code CLI over something like Windsurf or Cursor, but it's not me. But it was fun to play around with, and I guess I kind of have to play around with unless I can withdraw that $15.23 that is left in my account. I almost put $5 in there, and I'd only have 23 cents left, but I didn't want to run out of money. Whatever. Those are my thoughts. That's my experience. Hopefully you gained something from it. Let me know if there's any like tips or tricks with Claude Code that I should revisit. Let me know your thoughts overall, if this is something that you would use, or you like it built in. You like the VS Code fork with the AI built in. I love the VS Code fork because it's familiar to me. I use VS Code. I don't want them to reinvent the wheel and try to make a new code editor with all this and all that. Now I'm ranting. Okay, that means it's the end of the video officially. Y'all have a good one.